Hi, it's Todd of Tods Workshop here with Toby Capwell at the Wallace Collection in London. I had a commission to make a fantastic Swiss Sabre, the A489 from the Wallace Collection here. Toby very kindly allowed me to come in and examine the sword. I have now brought the one that I've made back, and we're going to lay the two side by side, which is a slightly scary moment for me to see how the two compare. And really just to get Toby's comments on it and just see what his idea of how close I've got, really. So we're going to do that now. So we're just going to get the sword out of the cabinet, we're going to put the two down together. I must confess it's slightly scary for me, and I didn't mention this to you, because what was very interesting for me was that I took a measurement, I traced the blade, I did all the dimensions on it, I got measurements. I then used my own photographs I took at the time, and I scaled those, but then presumably because of lens distortion, the dimensions on my drawing were not exactly the same as the scale dimensions on my photographs. So I thought, I know. I will look at the fantastic photographs provided by the Wallace Collection in their book, and I came up with a third set of dimensions.
Really?
I really did, yes. So in that sense, I've made a sword interpreting the three sets of dimensions and my experience of swords and my memory of actually what it was like. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I've got it somewhere close, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I just want to say also that we've had plenty of swordsmiths come to the Wallace to study and pattern and map swords in the collection. But usually that's the only bit of it that we've seen. They go off, they make the swords, and we never hear anything about it. Sometimes we get a photograph, but we certainly have never before gotten to then come back and put the two swords side by side. So that's the exciting part.
Let's see. Just see it nestling in the left-hand corner there. It is one of my favourite swords of all time. It's just beautiful. This, and to be honest, the A479 also at the Wallace, which I did a reproduction of last year or the year before. Here we go.
Okay. There's the slightly older one.
With a little bit of woodworm. So, that's scabbard.
Well, yours comes with all the stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's part and parcel, I think, really.
Do both of you made two of them, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Do they both have homes?
No, this one does, the other does not.
Looking pretty good from here.
I can see the loop on the original here is slightly tighter than on here. Just scanning all the junctions and seeing how it is.
You suddenly start looking at a lot of different proportional relationships, don't you?
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see the negative space between the bars a lot more than I probably would otherwise. The first question should just be, does that look like something a 16th century person would make?
Yeah.
I mean, this sword typology is very possibly a series originally. There's at least one other that I've seen in an exhibition catalog come up in the last few years. And there may have been a whole group of these that were in a German arsenal made for, the civic military or something like that. I mean, it's hard to know. But whoever made this one in the early 16th century may very well have made 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 more of them.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have all been the same either.
No, I mean that was a very interesting thing I discovered when doing it actually, is what I'm trying to do is match photo to photo. And I get my photos and I look at 20 different photos in different angles and I try and get the bends looking the same from each angle as best I can. That's fine, but if I was setting out to just make a sword, I would have gone, well, I'll bend it here and I'll bring it around and I'll pull it in, Yeah, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the whole process would have been entirely different. And they would all look like sister swords, but they would all be different.
But you'd just be, the original maker would just be eyeballing it, you'd just be flowing through it.
Absolutely.
And not trying to go from one thing to another.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. So, I mean, if you take this sort of S as an example, the fact that it needs to touch here, around about, or here, around about, that's fine. Whether the peak of that and the peak of that is 86 millimeters apart, it's not. It's neither here nor there, you know. And you discover that a lot whenever you look at sort of medieval stuff. Renaissance is that an overall impression is given, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the overall impression. In that sense, yes, overall impression. At least
but overall, the dimensions seem, given that you were trying to decide which set of measurements to go with, I mean, the proportions, the length of the blade, the length of the grip too, that seems pretty much right on. And getting the grip right on one of these is especially, it's always tricky, isn't it? The grips are always the wrong length, but this isn't really a single-handed sword, but it's not really a long sword either.
No.
So the grip is a funny one in terms of its length.
It is. I was wondering sort of almost how you go about using the thing, because it needs to be used like a single-hander, but it's not a single-hander. So it is quite a strange object.
And it's such a sculptural blade too. So what's the weight like?
The weight on this is 30 grams under that.
It's 30 grams lighter.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly feels good. Just judging it on its own merits, as a sword you might have to fight with. It's feels perfectly good. Doesn't feel too heavy. Doesn't feel too light either. I don't really like swords where there's no sense of weight in the blade. I like to have something up there that wants to cut things.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay, now we're gonna have to start casting back and forth now. I mean, 30 grams isn't much, I guess, right? I mean, should you be able to feel that?
I suspect you probably shouldn't. I mean, the point of balance is, so it's like about 3 or 4 millimeters different, 3 millimeters different. Or something. So I think the point of balance, you wouldn't even really notice that.
If the balance is the same, it'll feel the same. Within reason. I'm just looking at that terminal up there, and yours is actually a little bit nicer. This one makes you feel like he's made 20 of them and he's getting tired of it.
If I had to hand file with their files of the day, I'd be tired of it too. Yeah, you do feel that a little. I mean, it's one of those things, is that you actually, again, the crudeness very often that you see on medieval examples is not something that you could sell as a maker these days. Right. People just wouldn't have it. Yeah. I mean, it's a classic example for me is the Rython sword in Leeds Armour, which I've done a few reproductions of. And the blade is just horrendous, in terms of quality. The casting itself, the cast hilts are got many casting flaws in it.
Little bubbles
and pits.
Yeah.
And not in a million years could you send it out in today's world.
I'll trade you.
Yeah. It is very interesting to see. I think when we came here before with Owen, he was saying that this really is a blacksmith's hilt, and that he'd love to know it. And I really do know what he means. There's all the junctions are forge welded, obviously, but often, like this one here, not cleaned up enough again to modern times. You know, you've got quite a step change there in the middle or something like that.
That's, sorry, which one is that?
This junction here.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah. You know, where it's
blocked on.
It's been blocked off.
Yeah.
You can't adequately get access to clean up here, and presumably on the original they didn't really bother that much.
Yeah.
Whereas I've had to try and do that. And again, I suspect the way this guy did it is he put all the bars together in one hit, and then he gave it to some little apprentice for a day to clean up as best he could.
Do what you can do with this.
Job's done.
Yeah.
So it would come out as a different look, and it would come out as more of a historical look, you know, if you did it that way.
Yeah, I'm getting this with armor too. I'm having some new pieces made, and I've said to the makers, I want that dirtiness. Don't cut all the plates to line up perfectly with each other. Put a little bit of wobble. Don't turn the edges perfectly. Put a little bit of wobble. I want to see a bit of that dirtiness.
Yeah.
I mean, don't go mad with it. I still want it to look like it's well made, but by someone who is working on something of a time frame and can't be taking days and days with it.
Yeah, that's something that I always battle slightly, is like the 479 that I did. German longsword with a very fat blade. And you look at the hilt on that, and it's rough as hell, actually. And I have to try and find some balance to not make it sterile and perfect. And it could be possible to do that with another day into the yard, no problem. But it would lose something in the process. And so it's finding that line between what is frankly rough as hell and not acceptable, and something which is perfect and in my mind is not acceptable. And you do have to tread that middle ground.
And making two at a time, did you keep the work on them? Were you doing every stage twice, or did you finish one and then do it again?
No, I went step by step. So on each one, I did the next phase. So if I felt that I'd gone in a wrong direction on the first one, then I could change tack slightly.
Right.
But I find for me it helps with the fluidity, you know, in the sense of when you're putting the fullers in and you're working out how to do that, it's better to then do the second one while you're in the zone.
Right. While you've got your mind on that.
Yeah. Because all of these pieces are always a voyage of discovery. You know, I haven't made a sword exactly like this before, so there are new challenges on it and new things to learn. And it's good to effectively tackle that fresh. Not fresh, but well, it's in your memory, rather than from scratch, which a week and a half later or whatever, to start the job again.
It would be interesting actually to get our hands on another original to compare how much variation is there in the originals themselves. And you might find that yours slots quite nicely into the acceptable range of variation.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, being 30 grams off for a handmade object.
That's all right. That's all right.
It's,
And they feel remarkably similar, really.
That's good.
If I was being super picky, I would say that the original has a tiny fraction more desire to cut things in half. This one does too, don't get me wrong. They both have that sense that they want to strike downwards, you know what I mean? It's something to do with where the weight and the sweet spot of the blade is, points of percussion, points of pivoting and all that. But this one feels like it still wants to kill things a little bit more than this one. But only a little bit. Only a little bit. This is really good sword. Absolutely. And I'm wondering again a lot more about whether we should find a home for the other one.
I'm sure something you'd be around.
So you'd say that the other one is the other one different in any way? Or
the other one is
this is the one that's over.
That's the one that's going for. The other one is very slightly larger again, and whereas what is a shame on the other one, but is the nature of why I often do two, is you've got a very strong distal taper transition here. So, you know, you dip from whatever it is, 9.5 down to about 6, over 150 mil. And so effectively you are turning a corner. And unfortunately I dug slightly on the hollow grind at that point. So there is, not structural, but there is a ripple in the edge that I would rather not be there. Otherwise it's basically going the same sort.
Where's this one off to? What part of the world?
Switzerland.
So that's a good place for it to go.
Going to its true home. Yeah. I'll just show you the scabbard as well. So there wasn't the budget for a super fancy. So it's a little bit fancy scabbard.
But that's perfectly fine for this type of sword. I mean, it's still a military sword. I can't really see this looking fantastic in something really elaborate. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to be very happy. He should be very happy.
I mean, if he's not, then he's a very fussy customer. I'm sure. It's a lovely piece. I think it's never perfect, but it's a good copy of a fabulous sword. It kind of looks like it's a forge weld there, and you wonder. And when I construct it, I did this bar, for instance, I did as one bar, which I sort of off-center ground and then bent and then filed to dress it. These ones I did as separate bars and welded at the centre. But what I found, and then actually I bent them to shape and then welded them at the ends. But actually what I found is you're forever going back to try and get all the bends and the curves correct. And I suspect that what they actually did, because it would just be a faster way of doing it, is to forge weld this bar and weld that bar, and then to pull them around, heat them up and pull them around, and then where they overlap, then to whack the join in and dress back. It's just a quicker way of doing the same job, I think. And they've mastered it very well, as you were saying. But they've mastered it well because what they've done is they've highlighted where the overlap joint is.
Right.
And
they've made a decorative feature out of it.
Yeah.
Which makes you almost think it's got to be a solid piece because they're calling my attention to the fact that it looks like two branches growing together. Which it is. It's like a artistic double bluff, isn't it? It just works. It's the easiest way to do it, but then they make an artistic thing out of it, which is just great, isn't it?
It's a little like that thing that when you make a mistake, don't hide the mistake, highlight the mistake, and say that it's something else.
Meant to do it.
It's here all along. There's nothing to do. No, and it's the same way of doing that really. That what you're doing is you've knocked off, I don't know, half an hour's work on making that bar, but dressing it as something else, dressing it as a feature, and then go, yeah, here it is. You know. So I suspect that's what they did, but you know, obviously with that analysis, it'd be very difficult to tell. But you know, you get not everything's perfect, as you said. You know, this weld here is failing. But here again, it's quite interesting that that's quite clearly a forge weld. You know, and that it's got that overlap and that swelling,
splat. Yeah.
But a wonderful, wonderful piece. Well, anyway, Toby, thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you for
letting me bring it in.
Coming back at the end of the project. It's great. We should do something else.
Yeah, well, you know what it is? you know what the next has to be?
What?
I don't know the accession number, but the Lang Massa there with the little snake coming up from the guard, up the handle. And it's got like
like the Maximilian one.
Yeah. I mean, that's half jewelry, but yeah.
Some eager somebody might ask you to do that, who knows?
Heavy hint out there. But one day, that's got to be one. And I'd like to relive the Colonna Felsbow, I think it is, crossbow. That I'd like to revisit because I think 10 years ago I did that, and I'm better now. So. Yeah, but thank you for the opportunity. It's just been great. It really has. It wasn't so great 2 weeks ago. I was cursing a bit more then. But, lovely. Right.